Okay. My name is Grandma Sherley. But in the far south, they call me Mama Sherley. I'm an indigenous elder from the north who has migrated to the south. And I'm a sun dancer. But mostly I'm just a person who cares about this life and what it's really all about. Many people call me a healer, and I think that's probably the most accurate way to talk about a little bit about what I do. But mostly, I care about people and I care about all of life. I don't believe that there's anything called separation. We are all one, and we're all connected, and we are all part of Spirit, and Spirit's part of us. Even the Bible talks about that in the old stories of how we came to be. A little bit of an argument with some people about when we came and all that kind of good stuff, but the truth is, it doesn't matter, we're here now. And we live in a universe that has both positive and negative polarities. And that's reflected in the 23rd Psalm. And it's also reflected in a buffalo tooth that I have on this pipe that I'm going to do later on tonight. They asked me if, and there's a balance between the two. That's the center path. People think about it as good and bad, right and wrong, good and evil, whatever. I don't think about it like that. We have a magnetic polarity and we have an expressive polarity. And what that means is that we have a nature that manifests life and manifests all kinds of things in our lives that we choose. And we have a nature that expresses life and is part of the way that we operate. One is seen as feminine, one is seen as masculine, one is seen sometimes as dark, one is seen sometimes as light. But the bottom line is we have a center path, and that path is reflected here. These two are in balance. They're called the masculine and the feminine nature. And then there's a path in between. That's also reflected in the yin-yang symbol, and that's reflected in the 23rd Psalm, like I say. They talk about that. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me lie down between the still waters. He restoreth my soul. Yea, that I walk, and I'm skipping around a little bit in this, but yea, that I walk in the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. You restoreth my soul. And here's what happens when we come into the blending of the center with that. We have a center path. Sometimes we're over here, and people don't realize that in this darkness they're afraid of is where they'll really find their strength. The challenges they have to face and the challenges they have to master. Over here is the way we express ourselves in life and what that's all about. And that shows up in all kinds of ways with what we do for a living, what kind of ethics and morals we have, what that's really about for each one of us. And we have choices about that. We make choices about how we live and what we do with our lives, and that's an important reality. Part of what that's about for each of us as we move forward in life is accountability and responsibility. People don't always like those words, and I'll tell you one they like even less is truth. What is truth? I'm a truth teller. It's not always been a popular place to be, I can tell you that. But what I do know is it's a whole lot easier way to live. It may not make me one of the most popular person around, but I have a lot of friends and I have people in my life that are glad I'm the way I am, so it all washes out in the long run. However, they want me to talk a little bit about 2017. What needs to happen in 2017? I'm sure most of you know about what's happening in the states around Standing Rock and the fight for water, to protect the water for tons of people. That's also happening in the Mississippi. Over by the Mississippi River, that's beginning to happen in Iowa, where they're getting ready to dig part of this pipeline. It's happening all over, but it's also happening in almost every country in the world that has oil. It's happening in Ecuador, and there are places in the Amazon where you put your hand in the water, and when you lift it, it's black. There are places in the world where you can't drink the water anymore. Land is being taken everywhere by the oil companies and the governments who want money, and the people who are greedy and all the rest. And there's a covenant with the indigenous people, and I use that word as a serious word. And y'all are familiar with it. In the Jewish world, there was an Ark of the Covenant, which is an agreement that the Jews had with the Creator about a way that they would live their life. We all have that with spirit one way or the other. It doesn't really matter what world religion we are. The question is, where is our spirit, and how do we live that, and how do we reflect that in life? Because there's a lot that goes on with that. And so the real question comes down to, this earth is sick, and we're part of the reason. We're part of the reason because we don't recycle. So the ocean is full of plastic and it's destroying life. What's more, 2/3 of the world's oceans are full of radioactivity now because of what happened in Japan. The water in many places is dangerous to drink. There are companies that poison food telling us GMOs are safe, and they're not. It's causing a ton of problems everywhere. Then we have all the poison that's put on things through the air that's killing all kinds of stuff and making all kinds of people sick. Right now, all over the world, whole countries are banning all kinds of things to try and protect the people. And we're all going our own way and doing what we do, and that won't work. If you want a message for 2017, connect. Now, we live in a world that says, how are things? Well, in the South, people say, ¿Cómo está? Bien. In the North and other parts of Europe, they say, how are you? Fine. No problem. Everything is cool. Except it's not. It's a lie. We don't know what our neighbors are doing at all. I saw a photograph the other day of people walking off the edge of a cliff because they were looking at their telephones, texting, and not paying attention to where they're walking. Now, we could all laugh about that, except we know it's the truth. We know that we live an isolated life, and at the same time are catapulted into a place where, because of the internet, we're seeing what's going on all over the place. Tonight, just before I came here, I was watching a video. They're one of these 2 or 3 minute things, and then another one popped up, and it was of children in Syria, where the last working hospital in Syria was bombed with the children in it, and they had to get them out. It's very hard when you see that, and you see what's happening in the States at Standing Rock, and when you see what's happening in other parts of the world right now, to deny that there's really problems. And yesterday I saw a video of thousands of women in Israel walking together, calling for peace. And these women were Palestinians, Jewish, Christian, and part of the other the other 3 centers of religion. They were Muslims. There were Baha'i. So what we were looking at was the women of the world in one of the centers of the world called Jerusalem, walking and singing and praying for peace. It reminds me a lot of 1985 when I was in Argentina in Buenos Aires. It was 2 years after the overthrow of the military, and how frightened people were because of all the children that were stolen, and the people, 30,000 were killed by the military before that overthrow. And they were mostly young. The military walk into a restaurant, look at a table, take everyone, they were never seen again. But it was the women that marched on Thursdays at the Plaza de Mayo that changed it. The grandmother and the mothers marched. Bottom line is, we have to open our hearts, and that's not so much a problem here in Mexico, and it's not a problem in the South. It's a big problem in the North. And it's a problem in other countries as well. Because here, at least, it's a common word. Love is a common word in the South. My granddaughter is married to a man from El Salvador. They know each other's names, but they talk to each other, my love, and they mean it. Part of the problem is people have gotten so busy that they've forgotten what it is to connect. And with the technology of today, everybody goes their way. So it's hard to find a family that sits down to a table and has dinner or breakfast. It's hard to find a family that makes a prayer and feeds the spirits. It's hard to, because everybody has to work. There's not so much money. There's a lot of problems related to that. And then it's really not okay to tell someone when you're having a real hard time and you need support for the day. So you don't know what's going on with your neighbors. You don't know what's going on with your own family. You don't know sometimes how you're going to make it from one day to the next. If your kids are sick and you don't have enough money for medicine, well, oh well. And it's not oh well, because people worry and the stressors go up. And the people do what they have to do. But there's this word privacy and this word tranquila. You don't go above a line and you don't go below a line. You just keep everything steady in the middle. The only problem is life is not steady in the middle. The problem is that life brings all kinds of challenges. Sometimes your partner, male or female, has a lover. Sometimes the children are sick. Sometimes you don't know if you've got enough money to buy food when you pay the rent, or if you make a choice to get something else you need, how you're going to make up the difference. People don't connect, except they watch the world go by, or they connect by way of texting or talking on the phone. But heart to heart, really talking and sharing, it's not that anybody can fix anybody. They can't. That's an illusion. All of life, in many ways, is an illusion. But we're also in another time that is not an illusion. Earthquakes are happening. Floods are happening. Hurricanes are happening. Earth changes are happening all over the place. And it's all part of a prophecy. And in the long run, it's going to be fine. But in between, we got hard times coming, and nobody knows how they're going to survive, because we don't know when things are going to happen. We just know that we have to live our lives. But if we don't connect and come together, people will fall. There's this saying out of the philosophers of long time ago: if you're alone, you fall. Divided, we fall. When you're together, it's a whole, you come together and you survive. And you sometimes do more than that. The building of community is really important. The kids come home, you're working, you're tired, there's all kinds of things. The kids go to the park and play, but who do they talk to, and where are the elders? Because there's something that's going to happen. It's predicted, it's just about when, not if. And that's this electromagnetic pulse that different nations of the world talk about. If that hits, there is no electricity, no refrigeration. So how do you survive? What do you do without cell phones? And what do you do without telephones? And what do you do when you don't know what you're going to do? And maybe you got water and maybe not. If you come together, it changes things. And major disasters, we all know it works. We've seen it. We see people in places that have earthquakes, and everybody comes together and helps everybody out. And then they go back to their isolated life. That's not going to serve us in that time. It's really tragic in many ways, because the fact is that part of what's happening, and there's examples of it at this point, there are people in the Amazon the indigenous people who are coming together and really starting to back each other up. At this point in the States, in Standing Rock, everybody's watching what's happening there. And the truth is, I think that the people who have controlled things for so many hundreds of years, really thousands, around money, the peons or the peasants versus the wealthy, the fiefdoms, the kingdoms, all of that. The people with the money control a whole lot, and they buy politicians, and there's no point in even thinking about denying it. And then we have somebody like Trump who's gotten into office, and he's putting everybody in place, and it's a disaster. So what's going to happen? People are coming together, and they're coming together as units and communities. What that means is at Standing Rock, there are 6,000 people there from all over the world, along with indigenous nations from all over the United States who are there. And I have two grandsons, one that's there now and one that was there. All of us are focused on suddenly realizing that if we don't pull together, the waters of the world are going to be poisoned, and then what are we going to do? We have to work together, to come together as a unit so that we can pull on the strengths of everyone. It's not for somebody to be a big boss. That's absurd. We have to work together as a unit. We have to come together and realize that we have to be honest with each other. You know, if somebody asks us to do something we don't know how to do, I mean, it's a joke to watch me around the computers. Forget that. I mean, I have people who help me out, and I know how to use one, sort of. But I don't even begin to use 10% of what my computer's really capable of, because I'm a BC girl. That means before computers. I'm also a BTV girl. That means I was 16 when television came into existence. I grew up where we grew our food. I grew up where we knew the neighbors. I grew up where we had a responsibility to check on the elders every day. I grew up where we had all kinds of things that we did together which had nothing to do with anything except having conversations and listening to stories and all kinds of things that were in service to life, and we watched our parents do the same thing. Those processes are important. But how many of you really know who your people are? How many of you know really what your connections are? You know, the truth about me, I was a child when I began to realize that all kinds of things were going on around me, and that I had all kinds of other things happening too. I had guides, and I had guardians, and I had beings that talked to me and told me all kinds of stuff. And I used to talk to my dad about it. Now, my dad, for the first part of his life, was born and raised on a reservation in Oklahoma. My great-grandfather was a survivor. If you look at some of the videos that are out now, you see a lot of things that happened to the indigenous people in the States and in the South. Between the North and the South, 100 million indigenous people were murdered. Murdered. Yeah, some of them fought back. They even tried to hold their own. But greed does terrible things to people. At the same time, both in the North and the South, one of the principles that were important is that the indigenous people are the stewards or the caretakers of this earth. It's up to us to hold the line when it comes to this. In Colombia, a number of years ago, the Kogi people came out. Nobody knew they were even there. They've been hidden for 5,000 years. But when the earth changes started to happen, they came out and they asked to see certain people. After they delivered their message, they went back to the top of the mountain and closed the door to their place. You cannot get in. They called themselves the Big Brothers, and we're all the little brothers and the little sisters. And what they did is warn us that we have to come together, that we have to learn how to know each other again, that we have to know each other's stories. There's only really one story, well, there's several actually. You know when someone in your neighborhood dies. You know when someone gets married. Maybe you know when someone gets baptized, and has a baby. Maybe you know when First Communion happens, because it's a big deal. And this is basically a big Catholic country. So whether it's Catholic, Judaism, Native American, Muslim, the Tao, Buddhism, Hinduism, any of the other philosophers and the spiritual practices or religions. I got real curious once, so I decided, so I did a comparative religion studies. What I discovered is basically the underlying principles are all the same. Love one another. Take care of your neighbor and yourself. Share what you have. Don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat, don't kill. Don't covet what your neighbor has. Treat others the way you want to be treated. And the words might be a little bit different, but every single one of the religions is the same thing. And yet we do terrible things to each other in the name of religion. You know, I went to Israel once. And I walked the path of Christ because I'd had it. I don't know how many people have been killed in Christ's name, and I just decided, you know what, I want to go find out, so I walked that path. What I found was where Christ spoke and His words, that energy was as pure as it could be. It had nothing to do with what we as people have done with that to each other and in judging others. It changed a whole lot of things for me because I'd been hurt. But the truth is, we've all been hurt in one way or another, whether it's through abuse, whether it's through events in our life, through car accidents, whatever, cancer, people have died, all kinds of things that hurt us. And for a little while, especially on a death, people will come around, then they'll go away, and then there you are. What do you do with your feelings? In the early 90s, I started going to Patagonia, to the whales, and I've got something that was made from a vision that happened down there. Because I got this weird gift. The whales talk to me, and I can hear what they say. There were almost 30 of us that went down there. I went out on the water with the whales and did pipe ceremonies, and the whales used to tell us. So what I have in front of me is a glass plate. It was made by a very famous glass blower who, when we got back, the people who'd been in that group had it made for me, actually. And what the whales were telling us was that we're all one and we're all connected. So that we all, and our spirit, encircle the earth, and there's the sky and the water and the land, and that we're all engaged, that we need to hold on to one another. You know, this looks flat. It's really pretty. It's very pretty, this piece. But the whales told me a whole lot of things about connection. They taught us all kinds of stuff. And one of the women that was there had had an encounter with an ostrich, because ostriches are down there. And so I'd be out and the whales would say, that one right there, over there to your left. And I'd say, not give a name. Does she have black hair? Yeah, that's one. She needs to do a piece of work as the ostriches and their children. And another one needed to do a piece of work around why when someone is laughing and kind to them, they turn their back on them. Every single person in that group, and I was working with them, had a focus that the whales gave us. It wasn't, what do I need to work on today? And everybody was in agreement with this. I mean, it was really weird. And I've gone down there for 15 years, and every single time I've gone, it's the same way. They had prophecies, they had councils, they had agreements. And part of the agreement happened like 60 million years ago. And the right whales, which is what these are, from the south in the Valdez Peninsula, were the ones they chose because they're the gentlest of all the whales. If the humans came to a place where they were willing to try and save the whales, then the whales would intervene with the people. Of course, that did happen. And it started in the Valdez Peninsula, believe it or not. And I know the people who were involved that got Jacques Cousteau involved and all kinds of things. And here's what they said. We have to look at each other as the same. We have to be kind and loving to each other and quit fighting. We need to let people know what's happening for us so that we can have support. And one day, we were out on the boat because we always went out every day. I did a pipe ceremony with the whales every day. And they always came around. I got weird at times. And one day, one of the adolescent whales, because the Valdez Peninsula is where the right whales give birth. The southern right gives birth there. When this all started, there were only 3 a year. Now, there are about 350 a year. The northern right whales, there's only 500 left because of the shipping lanes. But the southern rights are growing. And nobody has ever seen one of those whale children born. We just know that they are from one day to the next because it's there. And they come back every year from August until mid-December, and by January 1st they're gone. But one of the adolescent whales got ornery and started coming at the boat, and 2 nurse whales just came in, squeezed him, and backed right up. They don't put up with that because they're part of a community. You want to learn about connection and how it works? Go watch the whale people. They are a community and they stay together. And you'll hear about this all over the net. They talk about the whales from the west and northwest. The orcas, well, they go down to the tip of Patagonia as well. But they work together. And because of that, they support each other. They told us we need, this vision came from the whales to us for the survival of this planet, because what they said was, if the humans, because they knew what was going to happen, they're the record keepers, and what's more, they got way more knowledge than we do. So do the elephants. We try and kill all those beings off because, after all, we're the ones who are supposed to be the best. Wrong. Wrong. That is not the truth. So we've done a lot of work. And we come together in support of this planet. We come together with the support of the whales, with the support of life, with the support of creation, with the support of spirit. And here's what we have to do: connect. We have to love each other. We all know that. That's taught to us from grade school and before. We have to have compassion for what's happening to people around us. We all know that too. I mean, we know a lot of people that, I mean, one thing, you know, we hear the stories of the saints and the martyrs and all the people who struggled to protect the young and the people who were suffering. We have to be kind to one another. That's the Good Samaritan. You know all these stories. But we don't live that way anymore. And part of it, we feel helpless and like we don't have any choices. But the truth is, we do. We choose how we're going to be with people. We choose whether or not we want to connect. And it doesn't mean we're not afraid. Of course we're afraid. We don't know who to trust. But I can tell you who I trust. I trust Spirit. I trust my heart. I trust what I've mastered in myself. I know what I'm not willing to do to another being anymore, and I know what I am because we are holy beings. We come from Spirit. We are the essence of what creation is. We come from there, each one of us, and we know that. And part of what we're doing is working our way back there to be with Spirit. But to do that, we have to join creation. Another way of looking at it. We have to treat ourselves and everyone around us. I was in a Sherley ceremony, the easiest way to put the Marakambi, a couple of weeks ago. And in the morning, when he was blessing us, one of the last things he said to me as he was going around the circle, after we'd been up and praying all night and singing and all of the stuff that goes with that, is always place the ancestors first. You know, we think we're alone, and we're not. We have our ancestors, we have elders, we have the critters, we have life. We have the beauty and the magic and the wonder of nature itself that nurtures us. And I never said there weren't difficulties in life. There are. And each one of us has to master what those difficulties are. And we can take as long as we want. Your soul is very thorough. And yeah, not everything is fair. Not everything is the way you want it to be. Sometimes there's a lot of pain and you wonder why, and I can't answer that. But it enables you to grow. It enables you to move forward and find where your strengths are, where your challenges are. And now I'm talking to you about what needs to happen for next year. You all need to come together somehow, even if it's just the people on your block. Go to the park one day a week and take lemonade for the kids, or cookies. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be some genius or something. It's called humanity. It's coming together and looking at somebody and saying, wow, you look really tired. It must be a hard day for you. How are you doing with your kids? But we don't do that. In the States, you know, you walk down the street and everybody goes, fine, everything's fine. And I just shake my head, you know, with that. Well, when I lived in New York, I mean, I came from the South, from the Southwest, and there you're polite to people, just like down here. And so I'd say good morning to people as I was walking. You'd thought that I had dropped a bomb in the middle. People would just stop and watch me as I went by. After a few days of that, I began to do it on purpose. It wasn't just an automatic thing anymore. It was, hi, how are you? Have a good day. And I'd get to the subway guy and buy tokens and say, wow, it looks like you've got a busy morning, are you okay? And they look at, their jaws would drop down and they'd look at me like, what in the world? But it didn't take too long before some things started to happen. And this is simply from saying, good morning, I hope you're having a really good day, or that you do. People started always coming the same way about the same time. So along the street, we got to know each other. Hi, how's your day? And they'd go, all right, maybe it'll get better. It wasn't that we had to fix it, it was just contact, making human contact. And I'd get to the subway and I'd be there to buy some tokens, and the subway guy would look up, God, it's good to see you this morning. And I said, how's your morning been? Better, you know, it's really been better. I've been saying hello to people. Simple hello, not what's your history, who beat you up last night, you know, what nightmare has happened, but just a simple, I hope you're having a good day, and human contact. It's, you know, it makes me sad. Kids make contact. They don't think about what race you are or anything else. We'll take our skin away, and I've got news for you. We wouldn't know what color anybody was. It wouldn't matter. We all are made of water and fire. Every spiritual structure in the world has water and fire because we know that we need it. It is the blood and the milk of the mother, the earth mother, the Pachamama. The four chambers of her heart are the four mothers. The earth mother, the water mother, the fire mother, and the air mother. They all work together for all of us, for every one of us. The blood is the sea. So we have the sea, that's the blood of the Pachamama and the mother. We have not just the sea, we have the lakes and the streams and the springs and the rivers that gives us the milk of the mother to drink. Oh. That's the light we all follow. It's our passion. It's our emotional nature. It's our minds. It's our hearts. It's our souls. It's our spirit. It's our consciousness. It's all that is that brings us from wherever we've been to where we need to go. And it lights our way. We all have a path and we all have a purpose. And the thing about a candle flame, if you really look at it, you can see it. The wick is us. The flame around it is dark, which helps, oddly enough, support the wick. Imagine connection. Imagine love. Imagine support. Imagine caring hearts. Imagine life without fear. Imagine